The second video that I'm putting on YouTube. Been having a conversation on TikTok addressing somebody who claims to be a dating coach. She actually changed it. She talked a lot about being a therapist and then challenged and said, well, I'm a dating coach. The thing is, we have to address the culturescape and why these people, therapists and dating coaches, have this extraordinary kind of anti-male um, therapeutic structure. Where does that come from? Why does it exist? How can we prove it exists? Now, her in particular, it's pretty easy. She has her Instagram link. I actually posted that on the TikTok. You can go and you scroll through a couple of her Instagrams, and instantaneously you see the feminist TikTok. She talks about the wage gap that has been thoroughly debunked. She hashtags toxic men everywhere. But where did that come from? Let's just assume it didn't come from her. Why is the therapeutic structure built in this way? Well, it's because most of the people that are at least credentialed therapists are actually, bachelor's or maybe master's degree level psych majors. Psych is a social study. They call it a social science, but it's a social study. And it's in one of the more liberal sections of what we already know to be liberal academic structures. So universities, almost the vast majority of universities in the United States are havens of liberal thought. Current liberal trends are very third wave feminist. I don't want to just call them feminist because there is a structure for looking at the feminine as a position that needs advocation, and that's fine. But the modern third wave feminists, I think generally it is agreed by anybody with common sense, has gone completely off the rails and become a place of kind of an insanity. They all talk about the patriarchy as though that is a structure that actually exists and can be proven and isn't just a scapegoat for all of the problems that they perceive in the world and don't want to take any level of responsibility for. When you come up and all of your professional and academic training is in these environments, which are inherently anti-male, inherently anti-responsibility, inherently anti-taking position, even if you came to them with a fairly equitable mindset, all of your training dictates that you blame men. So then when you get into the counseling therapy industry, and it is an industry, you bring with you that mindset. And it's not just there. In order to provide evidence that a certain thing exists, you often need to step outside the structure of that thing to say, well, because as an anthropologist, if we're looking at a given behavior, we want to prove that that behavior exists outside the isolation where we observe that behavior. So if I'm looking at a 14-year-old boy playing with, Tonka trucks, I'm going to ask myself, okay, does this 14-year-old boy in this culture play with particular types of toys, make particular, mouth sounds, have a particular propensity toward a type of play? Or do all 14-year-old boys everywhere play this way? So I look at what, these 14-year-old boys are doing, and I guess Tonka trucks by the time you're 14 is a little older, but you're following what I'm saying. I then go to, I go to France, I go to Russia, I go to Nigeria, I go to Sudan, I go to India, and I observe others. Are they engaged in activities that are similar enough that I can say, yes, they all do this everywhere, or no, this is isolated to that one culture source. In the same way, we want to look at the current therapy industry and say, okay, is this isolated to this industry, or do we have examples exterior to that? And we have examples exterior to that. Several studies have demonstrated that in the criminal justice system, CJ majors often sitting right next door to the psych majors, men and women are provably treated differently, and not just in sentencing. When you control for that and you examine the case all the way from initial contact through arrest, arraignment, lawyer arguments through trial to sentencing, vastly different. When police encounter men and women, who is initially considered to be the perpetrator and the victim, prosecution, charge filing, etc., are all vastly different based entirely on sex. So we see that men in society are held to a different standard as far as thinking through what they are responsible for, what they are accountable for, than women are. That is not a hatred toward women. I encounter a lot of that. Oh, you hate women. No, this is a provable thing. We can demonstrate socially that this exists, acknowledging that it does exist, and considering the ramifications of its existence does not say that we hate women. That doesn't correlate. Those things don't correlate together. We can provably demonstrate that there is a propensity to hold men responsible regardless of actual responsibility, and to sentence men more stringently regardless of equality of commission. This holds over into the therapeutic circles, where you have an even less ability to hold someone accountable for their work product. When you think about counseling and therapy and in terms of work products. So I'm in manufacturing. One of my credentials is Six Sigma, which is process improvement. So I look at the world in terms of how do we look at someone's work product and monetize that, right? Like if I'm going to a workers' comp company, which I've done, and we want to make a more efficient company, how do you look at what workers' comp assistants are doing and compare them together across the company to then make that a mathematical construct that you can then work with in a data kind of way? If you look at counseling the same way, if you look at it as a manufacturing, as they are conducting a work product, there is no quality assurance. There is no way for them to say, oh, this couple came to me and they should get divorced. This couple came to me and they should get married. There's no way for them to verify that the advice they gave, that the counseling that they gave was actually good. There's no way to check their work product. So they're set up almost from the beginning for failure. They're set up by buying into psychology as a science rather than an occasionally academically rigorous idea that gives us guidance on human knowledge, but not necessarily scientifically absolute. When they become counselors, they subscribe to these crappy psych fad magazines. When you go into a therapist office, you can often find industry, magazines, periodicals, where those periodicals, in order to have a work product, must consistently churn things out. And that's where you get these fad pop psychology trends, where from therapy, now all of a sudden somebody discovered gaslighting, 10 years ago, and decided to apply it to every fucking situation in therapy. And then it became a meme. And a meme from an anthropological standpoint is a piece of language that proliferates. It became a meme that then echoed through the culturescape. Narcissist is the same fucking thing. Before that, it was depression and codependence. So every about 7-8 years, the fads start to die down and you have the next fad. So the problem with therapy and counseling is they subscribe to these periodicals, which then give them ideas on what to apply to their practice and the new fad and the new trend. And in this way, they apply this kind of bad, shit level, non-rigorous, non-scientific drivel to their practice, and that proliferates throughout society. So you have a causation for why things are like this. You have various academic and professional institutions and structures. You have a social order. You basically have a setup for why these things are created and why there's no check and balance mechanism. There's no way, there's no quality assurance to say to push back. The totality of the pushback is things like men refusing to tolerate it anymore. That's it. So, and this has been kind of a wandering, diatribe of me just having a stream of consciousness as I make a video talking to myself, which is weird. But how do we turn this into actionable information? That's really where we need to go with this. If you are in a situation where you need to seek some professional counseling to adjust to a relationship, what do? How do you approach this? Because there are good counselors. To recognize that there is a problem with a particular industry, for example, does not say that there are no good members of that industry. How do you find them, though? Well, in the interview, you have to remember when you're going to a counselor, when you're going to a therapist, you are hiring a contractor. You're hiring somebody that's supposed to have a superior knowledge of relationship structuring, that is supposed to be there, that's hired as a contractor by you to help reinforce and rebuild your relationship with whoever you're going to counseling with. And that may even be with yourself. You need to go to counseling or therapy to iron out situations for yourself. First things you're going to ask are things like academic and credential. What are your degrees in? Who you were credentialed by? What was your experience? How did you get those? If somebody went to University of Phoenix to get a psych degree, well, they've never done any real clinical work, right? They just typed in shit online. Psych degrees especially are very open to confirmation bias. People go in, especially at the bachelor's level, they go into psych having preformed ideas, and they basically seek out information that confirms those ideas and then reject information that does not. That is the picture of confirmation bias. That is how psychology usually gets pretty screwed up, because psychology is rife with confirmation bias. So you might ask them something like, when you were studying psychology, what did you learn that contradicted what you previously thought about life and behaviors? And if they can't come up with a startling revelation, careful, because they didn't actually learn anything. They just went in and confirmed what they already believed. When they go through the credentialing process to become a counselor, what does that look like? Ask them what their school is. Not their school that they graduated from, what their school of psychological thought is. What is their therapeutic methodology? And if they start babbling and have this incoherent mishmash of various therapeutic ideas that they adhere to, they're completely full of shit. They don't have a therapeutic method. They're just sort of grabbing things from whatever magazine is sitting on their desk that month and trying to apply it. Whereas if somebody really knows what, they might say something like, well, I adhere primarily to the Gottman method. Gottman method's fairly scientific. It at least has some backing. There's a variety. I'm calling out Gottman method as something I just, I know about. But if they have a particular methodology that they adhere to, that's a good thing. If they don't, that's a bad thing. When you ask something like, how do you feel about roles in the marriage? They don't have to adhere to what you necessarily believe, but they should have something that they believe in, right? Otherwise, what they're basically saying is, well, there aren't any. Okay, so if there is no roles, then how are you going to assign who's in a leadership position in this, relationship? When you talk to them, when you're interviewing them at the beginning of this process, ask them who they believe is primarily responsible for the conduct of the relationship, and listen to them here, because now they're going to know what you're doing. Now they're going to know where you're going with this, and they're going to start trying to sell themselves, because they have to, right? They got to make a living. But start listening for those triggers of someone that's being dishonest. You can tell in your guts when someone isn't being straight with you. Okay? When I say people fool themselves, that is true. We are actually very, very good at telling when someone is not being terribly honest with us. It's just that we tend to give people the benefit of the doubt. Dishonest behavior tends to come in clusters. One really good trick, and this goes across the board, ask people things where you know that they know you already know the answer. Pick up the nameplate on their desk and ask them how they spell their name. People tend to have one way they tell the truth. They might have 7 ways they lie to you, but they generally only have one way they tell the truth, because they're relaxed and they know it's the truth. That is your baseline. When you can tell somebody that's telling you the truth and they deviate from that baseline, they're either lying or thinking about lying. That'll give you some good information on them. Anyway, this is just talking about what happened this morning. So I was taking some lunch, and I thought I'd upload to YouTube. I hope this was interesting. I'm planning to go live very soon. My plan to go lives is to go live simultaneously on TikTok and YouTube, and that way when they kill the TikTok, um, the live will still be going on YouTube. So I hope to talk to all of you soon. Thank you. Bye.